So we're going to have to learn some of the spaces in After Effects because for a lot of people, this is the first time seeing After Effects itself. And it's a pretty complex interface. We're going to first focus on being in the Project tab right here so that we see the assets that we import. So we're going to go to File, Import, File, and I'm going to grab that Sultan Takeoff PSD that I created. And you can see right here, we want to import this as a composition, or a composition retains layer sizes. For the sake of what we're doing, we're going to retain layer sizes because we want if you didn't retain layer sizes, the layers would all collapse. Like say you had layers in different spots, it would collapse them and just put them all in the center. And that could be, if you've already done some pre-composition work, that's not a great idea. So we're going to say composition, retain layer size, and we say open, and it's going to confirm that same thing again, right? Saying, hey, retain those layer sizes, editable layer styles, and we say okay, and you can barely see, here's the icon of the whole thing. What it does is it creates what's called a sequence, and it creates a folder that has the layers in it. Remember, it was 4 layers, all right? Bridge, body, head, head and body, all right? Body, head, head, body, head and body, head, bridge. Okay, so they're all there in a folder, each layer, but then we have this sequence that's built that is them all together. And when I double click that sequence, it opens up in this composition area. And you can see composition, and if you open particular layers, they'll open in separate tabs. You can just zoom in and out down here, or you can just scroll on a scrollable click wheel. If you're on a trackpad, I'm actually using 2 fingers to just jump back and forth. It retains the size of the Photoshop file, and in the case of this particular project, the animated movie poster, this is useful because the poster has its own aspect ratio. It's not based on some sort of video format like HD or 720p, 1080p, blah, blah, blah. So, and it also, by default, makes this a certain length, all right? So you can see these are all the layers in the file, and I can turn them just kind of like Photoshop. Layers can be turned on and off with the eye, all right? So I'm turning off the head and body, but that was there, but now I can turn off the head. I can turn off the body, all right? I can turn off both of those, and then I can turn on the head and body, all right? So I'm going to work with the head, the body separately, okay? Next, so I want you to see we have what are called composition settings. In this composition settings, you'll see a description of the size. So it's a huge file. I didn't bother to make it smaller. It was these were high resolution resources from the New York Public Library. It tells you a frame rate, and it tells you the duration. It happens to be 4 seconds in 7 frames. I actually don't know what the arbitrary start length is, but that seems okay for now. 4 seconds. I can do this in 4 seconds. Maybe it's like take off, take off, take off, take off, float down, and I should have a stopwatch and float it. Let's do that. We'll have a little timer on my phone so I can think about this. Oh. So we'll say stopwatch, start, take off, take off, take off, take off, float down, stop. So it's almost 5 seconds. So let's say 5 seconds. So I'll change this to, and now you have to remember this is in frame. This is 5 seconds, 7 frames. Okay. So this is hours, minutes, seconds, frames. Okay. And so I'm just going to make it 5:00. So now it's 5 seconds, 0 frames. All right. So it's a little bit longer. You can resize, all right, the window so you can zoom in if you're doing finer tuned stuff. All right. So there's the full 5 seconds, and because it wasn't initially all there, these have to be extended. So if we went to the very end, you'll see there's nothing there. Now there's just the head, right? Because I've extended the head. All right. Same thing goes, now I can see the body, okay? Now I can see the background, all right? If I wanted to, I'd said, I'm not going to use the head and body. I'm just going to delete that, all right? It's still there. It's not deleted from my project files. It's just no longer in that sequence, okay? So now that I have this started, so I'm going to use the head and the body. One of the things I want to do is make sure there's two things I want to do with the head. So let's say I want the head to rotate a little bit as he's going up, right? Like he's going to kind of turn his head. And so there's two things. I want to make sure that the pivot point is down around here, that the head pivots around this spot rather than right now if I rotate it, it's rotating by the top, and that's no good. I want the pivot point to be down by his beard, right? And also, I want to make sure that once it's there, I want to make sure the head is pinned to the body, so if I move the body, the head goes with it. Does that make sense? Okay? So there's two things I need to do. First, I'm going to have to work with the head. I'm going to double-click the head, all right? And I'm going to move the pinpoint down here, okay? So you can see I went from Composition tab to Lair tab. I opened the layer, and I moved the head center rotation point to the bottom. All right, so I can go back to the composition, and it moved it too. But that's okay. So now if I go back to the rotation tool, notice as I rotate, right, it's now rotating from the beard. Okay, make sense? Okay. The next thing is I need to, if I think about it, if I select the body, whoops, I'm in rotation. You have to move back to them. And it's good to remember, selection tool is V, rotation tool is W. So it's good to know these shortcuts so you can go back and forth. So notice they're separated, okay? And I want, as I move the body to the head, to go with it, all right? And a simple way the way that you do that is you say, the head is going to follow the body. All right? So when I go to move the body, the head's going with it. Isn't that great? All right? So now I've got two adjustments I've made. I've moved the pivot point, so I can still pivot the head. Moving to W, right? Moving to V. And I can move it up and down. All right? So they're independent. That pivot, I can change and make pivot changes. But the reality is now when I move the body, the head's going to go with it. Okay? Questions? All right, so we're recording all this still. So I'm going to move down. Now, I'm going to start here, and we're going to say he's going to fly up, and then once he gets to this point, or maybe around this point, the background's got to move. Does that make sense? All right? So we have a starting position. All right? And now I have to look at the layer, and I have to look at our basic transformations. As I go to transform, we have all these common attributes that I can move and create spline points, which I talked about. All right. So the first one is going to be position. Like I could change scale if I wanted to. All right. So if I felt like he's too big on this space, I could change him to 75%. All right. And maybe that's more fun. But in the context of that body, that means he's got to start maybe over here because we have these two characters that give us some scale, right? So I'm going to keep him fairly large. All right. But anchor point, position, my fault. Stopwatch, we have one position, then I go a second later, and I have another position. And so you see, do you see the spline is now growing? All right, here's that spline. And now you can see I could actually do that curve so he comes across a curve, right? So it looks like he kind of comes from the side and goes straight up. And now I can watch that, right? Okay. And so from this position, And you can see now it's not moving. You know, it goes up. And so now, and I hit pause, I'm going to back up, and this is the playhead, so you know at any point. So now I have 2 position anchor points I've generated. And now that I'm here, I'm going to stay here, and this is where the arms would flap furiously, but this is where now I would make the change in the background position. All right? So the background also has a transform, and I can set its position right here, and I'm going to lock it. So you remember, you have to lock the position, and then I'm going to move forward 2.5 seconds, and I'm going to then move the background down. All right? Okay? So now we have takes off, gets to a peak, and then it's going to float back down. All right? And so over the last 5 seconds, and then I can just move it back down. We have a final position, so I have to bring him back down. All right? Oops. Oh, I forgot. We want to have him, once he gets to a certain point. And in fact, what we need to do is we need to look at this position. Instead of guessing, I'm going to take this position, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to, right here, I'm going to paste it. All right, so I actually copied that position, and this last one I'm going to delete. All right? And so now I can finally and I'm going to copy this position of the character, copy, and paste it, so that at the very end I can also copy and paste him back to the position of the body back to the beginning. Copy, paste.
You just copied the
Yep, just the dot. And it automatically puts it along the right row that you want it. All right? So we have body positions. Body position goes up, stays still, body is staying still, then body goes back to its original position. Okay? And then it's the background that's moving. So background is still, background begins to move, background goes back down, and then position. And it's a perfect loop because I've copied this background position is the same as this background position. This body position is the same as this body position. This body position is the same as this body position. Now, the only other thing I would have to do now is I'd have to focus on animating the arms to coincide with all my movements. And then there's all these fun things I could try to do, which is I could use the puppet work to billow out the skirt, the dress, you know, the wide blouse or dress at the bottom, so it looks like he's like kind of like floating down, and then I can make him kind of hover back and do. There's all sorts of additional motion, but you can see this is a good start. All right, and so what I want you to do is start with what you got, and then. Oh, and you can see I didn't even match the float back down. So this is just a good starting point. And so when I'm done, let's say I'm done. Now, we were talking about GIFs. After Effects cannot make GIFs. It can make video files. All right? So to finish this off, to make the GIF, I'm going to have to export a video and then re-import that video in Photoshop to make the GIF. All right? So I can take this and I can say File, add. I'm going to add it to the render queue, all right? And there's the settings you can leave as they are, but make sure you notice where you're situating it, all right? You're saving it. And I want to put it back to shake that. So Sultan takes off, save, all right? And I hit render. And remember, this I should have resized the image before I brought it into the Photoshop file, but I didn't bother to. It's okay I can always resize it back in. But this is a huge, in terms of pixel dimensions, this is a huge video file. Because if you think about it, if I go back to the composition settings, it's this massive 3700 by 4200. Just for the sake of, so you know, 1080p, which is like high definition video, is 1920 by 1080. So this is an enormous video file, all right? More high definition than high definition. But for the sake of the video, I'm not going to bother showing you how to import a video to generate, but this is the, whoops, that's that one. There it is. Oh. Open it with VLC. And VLC is struggling because it's so high resolution. Here, let's change the resolution as we export it. File, export, add to render queue, another version, size. We'll make it a third of the size, right? That's cool. Much more reasonable size. Actually, make it easier. Make it a quarter of the size. Right? Say OK. Salt and take off. 1/4. Save. Render. There you go. All right. And there's tons of other things you could do. You could add shadows to that object, because the object you can lay a shadow to. But this is a good start. It's working with splines and After Effects. With the sake of doing some more sophisticated animation with what you already started. So you're going to clean up your Photoshop file, prepare it for After Effects, and then open it in After Effects. And then if you want to jump into doing some, let's save this. This is Sultan take off. And open, sorry, we can show more sophisticated stuff like this one. And that's based on all those crazy puppet warps, right? And this one I haven't even exported, so I'll do File, Export, Add to Render Queue. This is the one I want to shake that. Sultan. Save, render, and same thing. All right, and so that can be turned into a GIF pretty easy. Okay, so